Karsten Mueller says, plenty of unknown in our universe and galaxy for that matter. Do you think the human brain will ever have the capability of understanding half of it? No. No. We'll be lucky if we ever understand 100 billionth of it. This is the point. We can't understand it. We can make models that give us predictive value, which is lovely, lovely, and impressive. And I just got over saying how impressive it is. But the difference between understanding the universe and what we think we understand about the universe is the difference between a map of Texas and Texas. Texas is composed of pebbles and bits of dirt and scorpions, and none of them are in the same place at the same time, and tumbleweeds that are blowing, and none of those positions are the same. And frankly, when you get right down to it, each one of these grains of sand and each one of these scorpions is made up of atoms and molecules, and we don't know their position or status. And then when you get into the atoms and molecules of each one of these things, those things are moving around and all this other stuff. So we don't understand it. Now, fortunately, there are patterns, and if there weren't patterns, we couldn't understand anything. Patterns are great, and we can look at patterns, and we get smarter, and I think this is a noble, it's not only a noble quest, it's the noble quest. The most noble thing we do as a species is try to understand things. I'm just in a place in my life where I want to make people aware of the fact that we have got to be careful about this arrogance of thinking that we know what we don't. We don't know. We know so little. And the reason I am so on this jihad now is because, which is a personal struggle for internal improvement, is because it's the arrogance of thinking that we know that prevents us from asking the kind of questions that get us more knowledge. You only get smarter when you realize you don't know anything, when things that don't make sense. I mean, I talked about my personal health at the beginning of this episode for half an hour. I had a number of symptoms that I didn't connect, and neither did any of my physicians. And I went to 3 or 4. No one ever said to me, you shouldn't be taking this Adderall until we find out whether or not you've got Addison's disease. No one ever said that to me. No one ever said to me, hey, you've been coming in and complaining about tired for 6 years now. Maybe there's something systemically wrong with you. No one ever said that to me either, ever, until I found this nutritionist. So that's all I'm saying. I just think we need to be a little more careful. And the fact that we understand anything is an incredible deal. And as we talked about, I think, in the first one of these astronomy things, there's some evidence and some math and some interesting theory that says that the more sophisticated we become as observers, the more sophisticated the universe has to become to be observed. So if that's the case, that's a tail you can never catch, right? The more you spin around trying to bite that tail, the smarter you get, the more intelligent you get, the more sophisticated instruments you have. The universe just takes another step away from you. Okay, fantastic. You can ask a more pointed question with a more sensitive instrument. Now the universe is going to force itself to become more complex now. These probability waves on the quantum level are going to get compressed down to the quantum level, and the universe will become more complex as we ask more complex questions of it. I actually have a sense that's true. I don't know why. It's just a hunch. People dismiss hunches, but maybe that hunch is, 4 petabytes of processing power, something like that, in the human brain, this hunk of jelly. Maybe a hunch is that 4 petabytes functioning on a level that we call a subconscious level that is telling us something. Now, that may sound like believing in indigo auras, but I don't see it that way. A hunch is a hunch. Hunch is cool. We get a lot from hunches. Hunches are deep processing of many different kinds of information outside of the problem. That famous story about the guy who developed the structure of benzene, wrestling with how that atom looked. It was a very complex molecule, not atom. And they were trying to figure out the structure of it, and he couldn't figure it out. He's just thinking about it all the time. Finally, he goes to bed and has a dream about a snake biting its tail and rolling down the road. And he said, it's a ring. It's a ring. Yeah. He knew it. His brain knew that it was a ring structure, but he was so busy processing data that he couldn't look at the data internally in his head. He's trying to process all this data. He couldn't look at it. All the information he needed to come to the correct conclusion was there. He was just too busy chasing the processing of it. Finally, he goes to sleep, and his subconscious says, hey, it's a ring. How can I convince you of a ring? What's a ring? Well, you think it's a long line. So let's take something that's like a long line, like a snake, and have it curl around, bite its tail, and roll down the street. It's a ring. It's a hoop. The benzene ring. That's interesting to me. It's very interesting to me.